You're such a good human.
Yeah. Stop showing us up. Whose idea was it to have Astrid?
Behind every creative person or small business is a great story waiting to be told.
And we are here to tell them.
I'm Shane, aspiring author and man behind I-Endeavour.
I'm Hannah, semi-abstract artist and woman behind Sarah's Studio. And this is the
I-Endeavour podcast.
We're here today with author Astrid V.J. Hi.
Hey.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. It's been chilly here in Sweden.
Oh, really?
So, spring is not here yet. It snowed last week, so we're just kind of like hold in. And yeah.
I'd say you get proper snow as well. Not like a little flake like us. It's proper.
Well, we're having very strange weather at the moment. It's like global warming gone mad because we're having a couple of seasons in a day at the moment. We've got like snow in the morning, sun in the afternoon, rain in the evening sort of situation.
It's all over the place.
Anyway, why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself and what it is you do?
Sure. I was born in South Africa, and that definitely is very important to think about in terms of my formation and where I come from, because my dad is German. So even though I was in South Africa as a South African, I was different. And that difference has kind of been my constant companion throughout my life. So even though now I live in Sweden and I look Swedish, as soon as I open my mouth, all Swedes go, hang on, where are you from? So about the question, what do I do? That's a tricky one because I'm a jack of all trades. I am a social anthropologist. I am a transformational life coach, and I am a successful author, writing fantasy in a variety of subgenres. So yeah, I'm a bit of a complex, multifaceted person, and if I keep going on, we'll be here all night. So I'll leave it there and you keep going with your next question.
Was writing always a career path that you wanted to go down, or is it just something you picked up along the way and has now developed?
I think we'll have to say writing was probably my first passion.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that quite along the way, but I found out more recently when my aunt gave me some beautiful signposts that I wrote when I was 4.5 or 5 years old, with they're really cute actually, completely misspelled, but I had this need to put things into writing even from that early age. Although my drive to write fantasy came when I was 12, and I've been writing since then. So it's been a while. Yeah.
Very long time.
It's a long time.
And did you go to college to write, or are you self-taught?
That's where the shift comes in, because during my teens, I kind of saddled myself with the idea that I'm never going to make it as a writer. Writing is not a serious ambition, and it's not a reasonable job option for me. And so I needed to go and do something that was going to be sensible and that was going to get me a job. So I decided to study psychology and ended up hating it. But thankfully, I didn't want to give up on the writing just yet. So I actually took a double major course where I majored in psychology and English literature.
Okay.
And that then meant that I had to take a series of electives in my first year, and anthropology stuck. So I actually ended up doing 3 majors for my Bachelor of Arts.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Basically, what we're getting from this is that you're very, very intelligent.
Yeah, definitely.
Sum up.
How would you sum up what you do in 5 words?
I write transformation fiction. There we go. I did it in 4.
There we go. The writers are much better at this.
The writers are, but what would we expect?
True.
What was your earliest memory of wanting to write then? I know you just touched on an early memory there, but what was the earliest memory that you were like, yeah, that's what I want to do?
It's not so much... Well, let's put it this way. I grew into it and I'll blame my mom, because she's read to me from very early on, and she challenged me to read difficult books. So we read Lord of the Rings when I was 11.
Wow. I've read it and it's tough. I wasn't
Yeah.
11.
No, I didn't read it alone until I was much older. But the first time we got through it, because she did try a little bit earlier and we didn't make it. So the first time we got through it, I was 11. And that definitely, that whole thing of the love of words, the love of books, and the whole idea of just immersing yourself in a fantasy universe just totally captivated me. And I adored The Hobbit. And you have to remember, this was years before any of the movies came out.
Oh yeah.
So it was a very much a different experience back then, because now a lot of people, even with the Harry Potters, they see the movies first before they read the books. And I was lucky enough to be one of those who got everything in the right order.
Yeah, I was just about to compare, because Harry Potter, the books kind of, I mean, not, there was a shift later on because she took a while to write a few, but the early ones came out and I was kind of a similar age to Harry, and this is before the films and everything. My aunt and uncle got me the first book and I was hooked then. I wasn't much of a reader before then, and then I really got into it.
Well, I'd say more than got into it, I'd say you're slightly obsessed, to be honest.
Yeah,
now.
okay.
Yeah, the Harry Potters, I remember one of my aunts gave me the first two for Christmas, and I devoured them. And then I was like, when's the next book coming out?
Yeah. I used to be the kid that like stay up all night and like read it all. I don't know how I got the information in. What a sado.
Yeah, when the fifth book came out, I was, I said my dibs, and I was going to read it first. And then I had a vacation with my grandmother in Germany. So I had to finish the book before I left, because my sister and my mother were like these little vultures hanging over my shoulder going, when are you finished? And I remember speed reading the last 100 pages on the drive to the airport.
Oh wow.
My goodness.
Because I had to like finish this book. Oh goodness, yeah.
I remember
Harry Potter was also really resonant for me because it was the first fantasy books that I read that actually had, multicultural society. Because most of the previous ones were very much white. And that's kind of what got me into the writing when I was 12, before I got my hands on Harry Potter, was this idea that struck me, was that I wanted to write an African fantasy, because I'd never read anything like that and I really wanted to. And now, unfortunately for me, I guess, is that Tomi Adeyemi published her book before I did. So my very first novel is a latecomer now, but it's something I'm still working on, because it needs work. And, the 12-year-old mind needed to grow into the story, because it needed more than what I had at the time.
I think that's part of it as well. Like, you can start writing something, and sometimes it does take a good while for it to mature and to actually come to fruition.
Absolutely.
So, why don't you tell us then a bit about your most recent published book?
A good one to choose, because this one, The Apprentice Storyteller, I came up with the idea for the book over 10 years ago, and kept getting stuck, and I kept writing and writing, and then I get stuck and it just would not flow. And 18 months ago, I took my certification as a transformational life coach, and bam, I understood what I was missing. And then I wrote the book in a month.
Oh, wow. It's very quick.
Yeah. So it's very much that thing, is sometimes you have an idea, but you're not ready for it yet. You haven't learned what you need to learn, that you subconsciously know is there, but you can't quite consciously grasp. And you can't force that kind of writer's block. You have to grow yourself. You have to wait until you figure it out. So
yeah, I wish I had not the I was going to say dedication. I wouldn't say it's lacking dedication, but to sit down and write the full thing in a month is impressive, because I touched upon it in a previous episode, but I am awful for starting and then I might have 2-3 weeks between writing something, and it just takes ages. But I'd rather have that and then be happy at the end rather than try and rush it out. But obviously you had the ideas, everything was flowing, it was going well for you, so
we're completely different people, because I totally get the fact that you had to come back to it, or that you wrote it in a month even, and I don't get how you couldn't, like, how you park things, because if I'm doing a painting, I can't stop. Like, I can't just like leave it and come back to it. I like have to do as much as I can.
yeah.
You know,
for,
I have
for
to.
me, it's usually like I have the whole kind of overarching story, and then there might be parts that I have a section of, but I don't feel the chapter is full enough. There's not enough descriptive detail in there. There's not enough of the world building in there. But at that particular moment, I don't feel like I can give it what it needs. I feel like I need to think about it more. I need to really build up in my head what the rest of the story needs to be, and then go back and finish it, rather than just kind of like, you know, here's a 10-page chapter, which just feels kind of empty and it's just like more filler than anything. And I don't want that to kind of
Anyway,
happen.
please tell us
Yeah.
about the plot of the book.
Yeah, tell us more about your book.
It just this whole thing about the different strategies for writing, I think that's really fascinating, because yes, absolutely, I've found that I definitely have that same tendency. Like, if I get stuck on something and I'm like, no, I'm missing something here, or where I want to push the character is not the right way to go because the character it's not in tune or in harmony with the character, and then I have to leave it and wait and see and think about it. And often, like, the penny will drop in the most random of moments, and then I'll be able to go back to writing. But one thing I have found that's been really awesome is, because I've now been in this whole published author phase of my life for 2 years, and I get questions about what am I working on, what's the next book, what's happening. And also for my Instagram page, for example, I actually post about what I'm busy writing or what I'm planning to write. I've actually started working on the issues and the themes and where I'm going with these stories a lot better in sort of planning. That's not the way a lot of other authors plan. And so, yes, I would be classified as a pantser because I sit down and write and I see where the characters take me. But I do actually plan out certain scenes very carefully way before I write the book. And I find it actually helps because I know where I am and where I'm going to. And then most of the fillers kind of work themselves out quite quickly. So yes, maybe I'll need to take a few hours break, but it'll only be a few hours, not several days like it used to be. Because yes, I definitely had that before. So The Apprentice Storyteller is pretty much what it says on the cover. Is a young boy who wants to learn the art of storytelling, and he comes across the best storyteller, the master storyteller of them all, the most famous in the entire empire, and that's the first storyteller he's ever met. And so he goes, well, whoa, I'm going to have to take this up. I'm going to have to make this storyteller accept me as her apprentice. And that takes a little bit of time because Viola doesn't do apprentices. She's not that kind of person. As she puts it at one point, is she's just not a teacher. She's not born to that character. She doesn't have the patience for it, and she hates having to walk people through stuff. But the amusing thing is that the book is actually about how the apprentice teaches her the skills to achieve her dreams, because she's been living on the run for 20 years and hates her life and feels stuck and feels like she's never going to achieve anything of the things that she really wants to achieve. And so this boy shows her that, no, that's not true. You can actually reach for your dreams no matter what the circumstances are. And I find it's one of those congruencies of the universe that it took me 10 years to write the book, and then I wrote it 1 month before COVID-19 struck in China. And that then I was editing this book when we were in lockdown here in Sweden.
Mm.
And it kind of felt like, yeah, this is a book that needs to be out there. So everything in due time. It comes as it must.
Mm.
It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, and I think actually a lot of people have found this time at home and stuff like that a kind of an opportunity to really push forward with projects they've maybe wanted to do for a long time and just haven't got around to doing them. So that's
absolutely.
So tell us then,
and that's a little bit more, about the idea of what I call transformation fiction, because yes, there is a genre called uplit, which is uplifting literature, and amongst the most famous of that particular genre is Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist. And you also get other books that kind of fit in there, as like The Little Prince. And yes, there are books that give you an uplifting feeling, but I'd like to see it that I take it one step further, because I actually try to give my readers the groundworks for what building blocks exist for them to actually transform their lives themselves. So instead of writing a self-help book, I'm writing it as a fantasy novel, but it does have this aspect of actually teaching how we can achieve success in the face of adversity.
It's a really interesting concept.
So you're bringing all your knowledge together in your book.
Yeah, that's really good. So why don't you tell us then about a character that you probably most identify with?
Oh, that's a difficult one, because I write a lot of myself into my different characters or people who are very close to me. But I think we'll go for the first one, because she's special. So this is Aspiring, part 1 of the siblings' tale. And Elizabeth is a 14-year-old girl who I wrote when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
And it is very definitely everything I hated about myself ended up in this character. And then she became everything I aspired to be. And she has a very special place in my heart.
And was that your first book?
It's my first published book, yes.
Okay, so that also, I suppose, has a kind of special place as well. Like your first is probably the most exciting, and then it kind of, not that it gets less exciting, but the first one is the real
first on a lot of counts. Yes, absolutely, because it was the first book I finished writing, like, fully. And then it was additionally the first book I've published, and it's the first book to receive an award. So that.
Why don't you tell us a bit more about the award then?
Sure. It has received 2 literary classics awards, silver in young adult fantasy and gold for fairy tale retelling. And this is a retelling of the Grimm brothers' lesser known tale, Brother and Sister, which is it starts off about two children running away from home because their stepmother is an evil witch and has done awful things to them, and then transforms the brother into a deer, and then the sister takes care of the deer in a cabin in the woods until the king rides by one day and chases the deer, and the deer leads him to the hut. And then the king falls madly in love with the sister and marries her. And I like this particular fairy tale very much because it doesn't end when they get married. There's actually a whole section to the story after the marriage with, dealing with the witch stepmother and having children, and there's more to the story.
That.
It's not like life ends with marriage, like most most fairy tales kind of have that subtext.
Yeah.
And then when I was 15, I read Ella Enchanted, And I absolutely love the idea of giving a backstory to Cinderella and the prince, and that they actually know each other. But I was upset with the idea that it's yet another Cinderella story, and we have so many of those. So this was how I kind of combined my love of fairy tales and the absolute adoration for Ella Enchanted into something its own. And so the first part, the Aspiring, is written from Elizabeth's perspective, almost like a memoir. It's very much in her tone of voice, and it's her backstory of why does she have to flee with her brother. And then the second book, which is called Becoming, part 2 of the Siblings' Tale, here it is then essentially the retelling of the tale.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, I love the fact that you didn't just finish it at the marriage as well, because if there's one thing that annoys me about a book or a film, actually, even, is I want to know what happens afterwards. I'm like, no, this is like, you're cutting me short here.
Yeah, the adventure doesn't end there.
Yeah. There's always that kind of trope with fairy tales, isn't there? That, you know, happy ever after, everyone gets married and that's it, like, life
it's
just
also
stops.
an implication that life stops when you get married.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which isn't true.
No, definitely not.
So do you always have like a clear vision of your next book, or does it just does it just evolve?
I think the problem with me is that I've been at it for so long. I have so many ideas in my head that it's a matter of picking which one is it going to be. So, for example, with the Apprentice Storyteller, the original idea was a combination of this concept of the storyteller and the apprentice having their journey through land, but it was also a means to nest short stories, because I had a whole collection of shorter fiction that had kind of come to me in dreams, but I don't like short story and collections, just, random. I needed it to have a sort of frame narrative that connects all of them together, even though they are separate stories. And part of the realization when I did my life coaching certification was that each one of the stories, these shorter stories, actually fits in with one of the key principles of transformation. So I, in the end, decided not to nest them in the story. They are all mentioned in The Apprentice Storyteller, but I've actually created a new series called The Word Mage's Tales. And that is now these tales, of which the first I just published 2 weeks ago for my newsletter subscribers. So that one's exclusive to my newsletter and street team. And in 2 weeks' time, I will be publishing on Amazon the next book, which is called The Artist and His Muse.
Oh, wow. Very
I like
busy.
that title.
Yeah, I like the idea as well of you kind of giving that little exclusive to, the people that follow you and the people that are close to or keep an interest in what you're doing. I think it's a really nice little idea to just like, here's an exclusive story for you guys. I think it's a really nice thing to do. So I suppose fantasy is one of the genres you mainly write, but is there other genres that you'd like to try, or?
Fantasy is the umbrella genre, absolutely. And yes, each one of my books dabbles in one of the subgenres. So I have 3 fairy tale retellings now, because I have the brother and sister 2-part series. And then I have a retelling of the ballet Giselle, which is called Gisela's Passion. And I published Naia's Wish, which is part of a set. So there are 20 novels that are all fairy tale retellings. And Enchanted Kingdoms is what the whole set is called, is actually raising money for an autism charity. And that one it's a limited edition, so it won't be around for much longer.
That's really nice.
That's really nice.
And so that's kind of the fairy tales. Then the apprentice storyteller is what I call fantasy space opera. Not a focus on the actual technology. There's a focus on how the culture looks like with this technology, not so much what the technology does for people. And so that's why I call it a space opera. The word mages' tales are all very historically influenced. So each one is set in a different time period of from our time, but is also kind of set in the universe of apprentice storytellers. And I'm also currently working on the I-Endeavour project, which is a 4 anthologies where the authors together write a school year at the Gifted Blood Academy in I-Endeavour. So that one's quite a lot of fun because I get to work with other authors. That's been a lot of fun to write. And that one is fully young adult fantasy and obviously Magical Academy as well in the genre there.
What would you do?
If you weren't doing what you're doing, what would you be doing?
As you said, that's got a lot. That's actually a trick question for me because I'm kind of doing it.
Yeah.
I work my day job as an administrator for a Swedish organization that helps Muslim associations get government funding for adult education. And that's pretty much me in the anthropologist role, working as an anthropologist day in and day out, helping people cross cultural barriers, find their way in shifting sands, and it's a lot of fun. Although it is very taxing work, and I am looking to move on. That said, there has been an opportunity for a PhD in social anthropology, so we'll see if that comes through or not, because if that does, the writing is going to have to wait.
Yeah, you'd be very busy.
Absolutely. And then the coaching, I do a little bit of public speaking in terms of just presenting what life coaching is about. I don't have any clients at the moment. I'm open for clients, so that's, it's something that's kind of in the background at the moment, and it's influencing my writing more than anything at the moment, but it is there, and I definitely have a plan to actually start up a project here in Sweden to work with youths who are of immigrant background and to help them achieve what they want to set out and achieve in their 20s rather than in their 40s.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Wow,
really
you do a lot of very
admirable work.
Yeah. Very
putting
rewarding.
Me to shame.
I was just about to say, we were talking to someone else on a previous podcast about BS jobs, but you don't have any of them.
No.
Yours is all really meaningful and lovely.
Yeah,
There's no kind of corner.
No, it's just like everything has to
tick the list jobs here.
Yeah, there's definite purpose to them, which is, it's nice to hear somebody who's doing something like that rather than just the day in, day out stuff.
Everyone can do that. Everyone can have a meaningful existence. But it's up to each one of us to decide that we're going to do it and to let the fear fall away, because most of the time it's fear that holds us back. And if we think about it, I mean, my fear of putting myself out there held me back with my writing career for 20 years.
Yeah.
I just want to touch back again on the fantasy genre. I just wanted to get more of a kind of insight into what it is about that genre that appeals to you most, what draws you into it.
I love the imagined worlds. I love completely escaping our mundane, boring reality, only to find that there's so much to learn about our mundane, boring reality in a fantasy world.
True.
That's always appealed to me, is the fact that I can step out of my lived reality, have an experience, and then come back and actually realize that I can apply what I've learned.
Hmm. You have such a different way of thinking about things compared to so many other people.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, yeah, it's
It's very
the psychologist,
nice.
I think. Can you
Yeah.
definitely, definitely
You're
apply.
like, you can apply what you've learned. I'm like, I can escape into that and then
Yeah.
come back to my
Yeah.
real life.
Yeah.
No offense.
No, that's fine. It's fine. I can take it.
So what advice would you give to people wanting to start writing?
Well, why haven't you started yet? What's holding you back from starting? But to those who have started, I would say write from the heart. It's the one that I always say. It's really important to remember that when you're writing, it has to be authentic, because otherwise your reader is going to see that you don't mean what you're writing about. Or your heart isn't in it. They know this. A reader can see that. And those are the books that get put aside, that people don't ever finish reading. So don't write for the market. Like, it doesn't work. Write what you need to write. You know, your soul wants you to write, and the rest will kind of fall into place around that.
Yeah, it's really good advice, and it's something that I think we've spoken to a few, I suppose, writers or authors on the podcast, and it's definitely advice that they've all given is don't just write, you know, what's trending now, what's the most, you know, trendy kind of stories or genres. Like, write from the heart, write from what it is you want to talk about, because as you say, that authenticity is what readers want. And that's what helps you stand out from the crowd. Like, if you just write the same as another book, you're gonna get lost.
But that can be applied to anything as well.
Yeah,
Like, you know, there's
absolutely.
no point making a piece of clothing that is on trend. You should make what you want, and like, then people will see the love that you've put into that. You know, it applies to
And
absolutely
it's-
everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And studying, don't study like I did what's going to get you a decent job, because it doesn't work. You need to study what, you know, you believe in, what you feel in your heart you want to be doing, because then you'll do well and you'll find a good job in that field.
Yeah, I think if you're passionate about something, you have that commitment inherently within you to drive forward with it, rather than forcing it, because then you just step aside from it and you just don't go back.
Highs and lows.
Can you tell us about one of the best highs that you've had while writing? Okay, maybe I'll rephrase that. I'll say that again.
Don't get high.
Yeah.
Don't, because I think this is the perfect opportunity to share what my husband calls my habits.
Okay.
See, I have deal my editor and my book cover designer, and I have to save money every month to fund my habit.
Yeah, okay. At least it's a legal habit. That's probably a good thing. So what's been the biggest high in your writing career, and maybe then one of the biggest learning curves you've experienced?
Biggest high, and coupled to the biggest learning curve, was definitely beginning of March, receiving the USA Today bestseller listing.
That's amazing.
That's really good.
I joined the charity set, Enchanted Kingdoms, and this was part of the aim. Yes, we wanted to raise money for charity, but we were also hoping to make the listing, and we pulled it off. It was a lot of work, and that's where all the learning came in. Was I learned so much about marketing, about how to position yourself with pre-orders, and to really market a book before it even exists.
I think that's one of the hardest things as well. Like, it's such a minefield. I think for anybody who's looking to start writing, it's one thing that maybe you should really look into, not to stop you from writing, but if you're looking to publish, is there is so much stuff to take into consideration, and it's very tough, really difficult. I mean, I've not published anything yet, in like the mainstream or anything like that. I've put a couple of short stories up on my website and stuff, but nothing officially published yet. But even looking at like the different roads you can go down, making a decision which way or the other you're going to go, or try and go. But there's just so much stuff. But I think it's a great thing, as you said, like pre-orders is really important to just get that kind of ball rolling and get the kind of the hype for what you're bringing out there. I think it's a really good idea. And something that actually no one else has really mentioned. I think that's very important. I mean, I think it's probably very difficult as well for people that are really excited to get their first book out there. I think there's probably a tendency to just rush it and get it out. But it's probably to your detriment to do that. You really have to kind of wait until the right time.
Well, you do learn. Firstly, there's never a right time. It's like with having children. There's never a right time, but you just go ahead and you do it and you work your way through. But with the books, it's definitely good to have a brand that you're going to market. So it's good that if you have one book, that you at least already have a second one in the pipeline. Or if you're just going to write the one book, then you have to really market it well and get a lot of people hyped and helping you deal with it well before you actually release it. So that's, with me, for example, that's my first 3 books were essentially flops in that they did not do well on release, but they gave me the opportunity to learn with each one and to expand my network in the time it took between each one. That by the time I launched my 4th book, I knew I had a much better idea on what I was doing, so that when I got my cover back from my cover designer 4 weeks before my launch date and it was awful, I said, okay, no, I'm going to cut it here. I'm going to push out my launch date by 6 months. I'm going to get a proper cover done, and I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to use this opportunity to market my book in the meantime. And that was a very good, had a complete book. It was fully edited. But I gave myself that time to just do the work, do the steps. And that was very useful because I did actually hit #1 new release for The Apprentice Storyteller.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna ask you this question then. What do you think is the best way to market your book ahead of time? Considering, I suppose, especially if you manage to get straight to #1, that's pretty impressive.
It depends on you, because what works for me doesn't work for somebody else. I am very good on it for some reason. I don't know why that particular platform works very well. It just does. I kind of seem to have this natural ability to understand how it works and to use it to my benefit. I'm also pretty good on Facebook, but for example, Twitter, I have completely left because I don't want to even get involved with that nest of hornets at this point in my life. And I just felt that I'm not going to spread myself too thin. But so it might be, some authors, Twitter works really well for them. Other authors are using TikTok and it's great for them. Also spread out into YouTube. I've set up a YouTube channel and I do put out my book trailers, and I do sort of, well, let's put it this way. I have a video series about my first retelling and all the social material that I've actually woven into the fabric of the story.
That's a good idea. Kind of like a behind the scenes kind of like, here's actually where the story comes from.
Exactly.
Nice idea.
And so I give a bit of my background, like why did I choose a mountain setting for my story? Well, it's because I had this really idyllic image of Germany because my grandmother was from the Alps. So anytime we went to Germany to visit her, we would spend time either skiing or hiking in the mountains, and that kind of is my image of Germany. So when I then decided to retell a German fairy tale, I wanted to kind of put that into my book as well. So.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I suppose a lot of the time as well, we probably don't even realize that your experiences in life have imprinted into your way of writing. Like the things that you write about often do link back to experiences that you've had, and you might not even realize.
In a lot of ways, I think our storytelling is our human ability to process what we've learned and to share it with others.
Mm.
We've now just updated it to the 21st century and how we publish books.
Mm. It's very good. It's that understanding actually is true. Like being able to just take what you've experienced and actually share. And as you said, like we're sharing it in a way now where we're telling a story, but it has actual deeper meaning to it. Definitely. So one other thing then, with writing in general, I suppose, is what would you see as the biggest challenge that you would face when it comes to writing?
Finding the time to do so. It's this difficulty of carving out that time to just find the quiet to write. It can be very, very hard.
Yeah, no, I can 100% relate to that. Time is precious, and there's very little of it.
So can I.
Yeah,
And quiet time where you can actually sit and have a conversation with characters in your head, or just stare out the window for 20 minutes figuring out the scene, and no one's going to walk in on you and go, mommy, 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 I need X, or
Yeah, there's no such thing
or
as quiet
are
time in
you
this
done
house.
yet?
yeah.
Yeah,
There's no
no.
such thing as quiet time in here.
No.
You know.
So what's coming next? What should we be looking out for?
The Artist and His Muse is the next book in the Word Mage's Tales. Is coming out on the 30th of April. And the next one, The Last Warrior, will be out on the 9th of June. There are more in the pipeline. The Companion's Tale is almost done, so that one will also be coming out in the summer sometime. And then I have another charity project, which is a contribution to a collection of short stories about magical waters. It's called Enchanted Waters, and we're actually raising funds for the ocean cleanup charity and ocean protection charity called Oceana. And
Wow.
that one I'm really excited about because it's going to be fully illustrated.
Oh,
Oh,
lovely.
that's nice. Yeah, that is nice.
That's lovely.
God, you're such a good human.
Yeah. Stop showing us up. Whose idea was it to have Astrid?
Things from the coaching side is that you need to tithe, you have to give, but it doesn't have to be money. And so I thought, well, how can I give with my writing? And that's when I came across the idea of doing fundraisers through books, and that really resonated for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And you do see, I suppose, you see it maybe more with, I suppose, higher profile, maybe writers and authors that would do some sort of charity release or something like that, or a collaboration between a couple of writers. But it's not really anything I've really heard of other than that, to be honest. So it's really interesting that that is actually an option out there. And because as you said, yeah, not everybody has money, but if they're able to write something that people enjoy and can contribute, then I think that's a great way to give. Absolutely.
Well, if we think about it, the Enchanted Kingdoms set of fairy tale retellings raised $3,000 in the first week.
Wow.
Well, and that because it's a small charity, and they said that it covers their costs for running their current operations for 2 years, and so everything that's come in since then is a bonus for them to expand what they're doing.
That's
amazing. Really is amazing.
Share the spotlight.
So are there some other authors or writers or anyone really that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Totally. Always. I have some very great virtual friends because I've never actually met them in person, but they are amazing people and I love their books. The first one I will have to mention is M.L. Broom, who published her first novel at the same time I did, and realized that we are soul sisters. She's a romance writer, and I found that every single one of her books is just better than the last, and they're all amazing. The one she just published 2 weeks ago, you could just see her laying her soul bare in the pages. Even though it's a book, you can just hear her voice that she's telling her story. And that was, like I said, the authenticity really speaks to people. Her books do that for me. And every time she releases another book, it's like I learn another facet of this person, this wonderful individual that I've never met. Another one who speaks to my love for anime, because I am a secret anime fan, is, and I actually have a copy of his book. This one is called The Dragon Game. The first book in the series is Origin of the White Wind, and the author is called Xander Cross. And this one is a story about a Japanese shrine fox who has become a demon because he did something evil and is no longer a spiritual celestial being. He is now a demon. It's set in a future Tokyo, but with this whole concept of the Japanese pantheon of demons and gods and dragons, and it's just fantastic. I absolutely.
That sounds good. I think I'd like that book.
Yeah, you would.
I definitely think I'd like
Totally. I don't know if you know Rurouni Kenshin, the anime about the samurai Kenshin, but it's very much has that kind of feel to it. It's action-packed and full of battle scenes, and it's really, really awesome. And then the other one, which I'd like to share with you, is you're British, right? So you will get this.
Shane.
This book is The Sable Tales by Lawrence Switzer, and it is very much an American Canterbury Tales, and very, very humorous. Switzer's sense of humor is just hilarious. I mean, it's a story about the devil going on a train ride and all the people around him telling tales woven into this concept of the devil. And it's a ton of short stories, all completely disparate, just like the Canterbury Tales. I mean, they're not actually connected. But Switzer manages to connect them with little each one so that they kind of like play off each other. And you have this really hilarious story. It's very, very funny.
That sounds good too.
Yeah.
This is good.
Cue Shane buying a load of books now.
Yes, the time to read them is the problem.
I know. So where can people find you if they're looking for you?
On Instagram. And then all my books are available on Amazon. And some of my books are available wide, so on iBooks and Scribd and Barnes & Noble's Nook and such likes.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's been great. You've made me feel like a worthless human.
No,
No, I'm joking. No, you're very
inspiration.
I'm only joking. No, like you really do so much for so many, and obviously you have a real passion for writing, and you're using that in a really kind of positive way. And I think that's a huge takeaway from this for me, is you can use writing in different ways, and you've really put it to a positive use. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
So that you don't feel discouraged and others don't feel discouraged, please remember, I've been at this for 20 years. I've overcome most of my barriers, and now I'm kind of finally reaching this point. Most people don't have to take that long. So guys, just go for it.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you for listening to the I-Endeavour podcast.
Join us next week for another episode. You can find us on YouTube or your favourite podcasting app, or on Instagram.
And if you're a creator or a small business that would like to take part in Series 2, email podcast@idyllicendeavour.com.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to to make sure you see all future episodes.